Hello there. Today we've got a 2016 Isuzu NRR, and the driver was experiencing hard steering and not returning to center. So we're going to try and diagnose that problem, take it for a little quick road trip, and then see if we can resolve it so the truck can go back on the road tomorrow. So right now I'm in the truck and I'm going to try and verify the complaint that the driver was experiencing. I'm just going to make a turn and then come out of that turn, and the steering wheel should return back to center, but according to what the driver is saying, there's kind of a memory steer problem. So let's see what happens here. So I just made a right hand turn, I let go of the wheel's still staying in that right hand turn position. I'm having to bring it back to center manually. So there is something wrong with the steering. Most likely this is some sort of binding in the kingpins. Here, I'm doing it again. So we'll take a look at that. Alright, now after verifying the complaint, I've got the rear wheels blocked and got the front axle off the ground just barely, just need a little bit so it's not touching the ground, so you can feel that that binding in the axle as we try and loosen that up. Got the cab tilted forward. Alright, so if you come here and look at your front axle, you're going to see what's called the kingpin, which is right here, and extends down through the front beam. And if you notice here, there's two grease points, an upper and a lower. These yellow caps are something I added. They're cheap. They help keep your grease fittings clean. We've had problems with this truck having binding in the past, and so I added these after doing the last service. So we're going to pull these caps off and get some grease into these kingpins and hopefully get them freed up. Alright, I tried shooting some grease into this upper grease fitting and it wasn't accepting any grease. So what we're going to do is we're going to heat this very lightly with a propane torch. You don't want to get too much heat in here. I think there actually are some plastic bushings here. Just a little bit to get this grease that is solidified to loosen up. And then after we get this heated up just a little bit, we're going to use a grease injector, and I'll be showing that in a little bit. One thing I've got going on right here is I've got the grease gun connected to the grease fitting, and I've pumped this grease gun up as much as can be done. So a good grease gun like this can build up to 10,000 psi. None is yet squeezing through the joint. We should see grease coming out here, maybe up on top here, but it should be coming down out here. None's doing that yet. So this joint still isn't accepting grease. One thing you want to do at this point is move your wheel back and forth. So this is probably holding almost 10,000 psi. Moving that wheel back and forth is going to allow grease to maybe find a spot where it can start to flow in to that kingpin. So I'm going to do that now. Alright, so I just have been running the wheel back and forth, and I'm doing that with the truck off. You could do it with it on if you wanted. When you do it with the truck off, you can really feel when things are starting to change in your steering and grease is starting to flow into the kingpin. It'll go from barely being able to turn to being able to turn very easily with your hand, especially since the front axle is in the air. So I left this grease gun fully pumped, and now after I come back after moving the wheel back and forth, grease has expelled out of this upper part of the kingpin. So we know now that this grease fitting is accepting grease. We're gonna keep pumping this up, get more to come out here, probably get some to come out here, and then we'll repeat the same thing with the lower grease fitting. This lower grease fitting is really hard to get to I want to show you, you switch to pneumatic grease gun. You want to see the grease ejecting. I'm going to show you what that's going to look like. So start pushing out some of the old grease. See how this grease is, you can see it's darkened, probably by almost like some rusty grease that's going on inside the kingpin. Getting some blow by on this fitting, that's okay, but just wipe it now and then so it doesn't get on your rotor. But once you see grease ejecting out through here, you know you're doing good. We already saw it eject out here on the top, and just already I can move the wheel back and forth much easier. So this process needs to be repeated on the other side of the truck. Been working on the right hand side of the truck. You do on the left hand side of the truck. Make sure that that steering wheel is real easy to turn while this axle's off the ground. Once we know that you can easily turn it by hand, then we can go back and take it for another test drive and see if the problem's corrected. So I'm on to the other side of the truck, and this top grease fitting took grease no problem. You might be saying, if you're looking at your truck and no one's ever installed caps on your Zerks, where is the grease fitting? So just take a screwdriver, start digging around, and most likely it's just buried under gobs of grease. So I kind of know where it is because I already was just staring at it on the other side of the truck. But sometimes these things can be really hard to discover, and once you get all the grease scraped away, you got to clean the tip of this with a rag. Otherwise you're going to be injecting dirt into the grease fitting. So clean all the big junk away, get a rag, get some brake cleaner, whatever you got to do. Make sure this grease fitting is clean before you start trying to grease it. Alright, we're back where we started. We're going to just verify that everything's working as it should. Going to make a right hand turn. Let go of the steering wheel, and on its own it starts returning back to neutral. So that's what you want to see. You don't want to see that kind of memory steer where it's hung up and you're having to pull the wheel back to its center position. So just want to show you one of the tools I was using while doing this job. There's different brands. This one happens to be a Lincoln. There's the part number. This is a fitting cleaner, grease fitting cleaner. Now, a lot of people will just replace the grease fitting, and that's fine. I try and clean them first, because sometimes as you're trying to remove that grease fitting, you're trying to install the new one, the threads strip out. And then you're really in a big job. You got to try and retap the threads. You need a bottom and end tap. It can just get really complicated and make a nasty repair. So it's kind of worth the time to invest in one of these, and they're not that expensive, maybe 40 bucks. It's a really simple tool. Just fill this chamber here with light penetrating oil. I happen to use some trans fluid. Then you put this plunger in there, and you start tapping with a hammer, and that's going to shoot at a very high pressure penetrating oil into your grease fitting. And especially if you combine that with some heat, it gets that grease, that old grease that's all solidified and hardened, to loosen up a little bit, and allows that joint to then start taking new fresh grease. So really great tool to have in your toolkit. I recommend it. The thing makes a mess, but that's okay. This whole job, it gets messy, but it's a great tool.